At 60 years old, I felt something again that I truly believed was gone forever, a feeling I thought time had erased. A young man came to my house one day, only for a small favor, nothing special, nothing planned. But after that day, my home, my silence, and my heart changed in a way I never expected. If this secret ever reached my neighborhood, people would still be shocked, even today. So now, for the first time in my life, I am telling the story that stayed hidden in my heart for years. Hello, friends. I am not a special woman, not someone important, just an ordinary woman nearing 60. My face carries the marks of time, my hands carry years of work, and my heart carries stories that never found courage to come out. My life was simple. I got married young, raised children, cooked meals, cleaned rooms, lived for my family. Then slowly, life moved forward without asking me. My children grew up and left for their own futures. My husband passed away many years ago, and suddenly I was alone in a house that once felt full. The rooms were big, but the silence was bigger. Days passed quietly. At 60 years old, I felt something again that I truly believed was gone forever, a feeling I thought time had erased. A young man came to my house one day, only for a small favor, nothing special, nothing planned. But after that day, my home, my silence, and my heart changed in a way I never expected. If this secret ever reached my neighborhood, people would still be shocked, even today. So now, for the first time in my life, I am telling the story that stayed hidden in my heart for years. Hello, friends. I am not a special woman, not someone important, just an ordinary woman nearing 60. My face carries the marks of time, my hands carry years of work, and my heart carries stories that never found courage to come out. My life was simple. I got married young, raised children, cooked meals, cleaned rooms, lived for my family. Then slowly, life moved forward without asking me. My children grew up and left for their own futures. My husband passed away many years ago, and suddenly I was alone in a house that once felt full. The rooms were big, but the silence was bigger. Days passed quietly, nights stretched long, and sometimes I would sit by the window watching the world outside, hearing laughter, footsteps, life moving on, while inside me a single question kept repeating. Is this all that remains for me? Just breathing? Just passing time? Just waiting? One afternoon, there was a knock at my door. I opened it and saw a young man from the neighborhood, clean clothes, an easy smile, eyes full of energy. He spoke politely, saying if I ever needed help, I could call him. I smiled and mentioned my small garden needed some work. He stepped inside, and that simple moment brought a young voice into my home after many silent years. I made tea, we sat in the yard, and talked about ordinary things, the weather, the neighborhood, daily life. Then slowly he asked if I lived alone. I nodded and said my children lived far away and I had learned to manage. He did not interrupt, did not rush, did not look at his phone. He just listened, truly listened. And for the first time in a long while, I felt heard. After that day, he began visiting from time to time, sometimes to help with small tasks, sometimes to carry groceries, sometimes just to sit and drink tea. Slowly, the heavy silence of my house started to feel lighter. I began waking up earlier, preparing tea with care, listening for footsteps outside the gate. A forgotten feeling began to wake inside me, quietly, softly, without warning. I knew the age gap between us was large. I knew people would talk if they ever guessed. I knew society would not understand. But in those moments, we were not age, not labels, not gossip. We were simply two human beings, one lonely soul and one young heart, sharing time that felt real. Then one evening came that I will never forget. The sky was cloudy, the wind cool. He arrived and said there might be a power cut, and he came to check if I was okay. We sat inside. A candle was lit. Soft light filled the room. Shadows moved on the walls. Steam rose from our teacups. That night, our talks changed. I shared years of silence, pain, and memories. He shared his dreams, his worries, his hopes. Somewhere in that candlelight, a quiet connection formed, not named, not defined, but deeply felt. No promises were spoken, yet both of us understood that something had begun. Still, deep down, we knew this path was not easy. It was a path hidden from eyes, carried in silence, fragile like glass, a path that could not last forever. And that evening marked the beginning of a chapter in my life that would change me in ways I never imagined. But the real test, the moment that would decide everything, was still ahead.
After that candlelit evening, something invisible yet powerful settled between us. Nothing was said openly, no promises were made, but both of us felt the change. His visits became more regular, yet always natural, never forced. Sometimes we spoke for hours, sometimes we sat quietly, listening to the clock and the distant sounds of the neighborhood. I found myself caring about small things again, fixing my hair before opening the door, keeping the house neat, placing an extra cup on the table without thinking. My life, once filled with empty hours, now had moments I looked forward to. Yet every time he left, a small voice inside me reminded me that this story was living in shadows, not in daylight. We were careful, very careful. No one in the neighborhood suspected anything beyond a young man helping an elderly neighbor. But inside those walls, a quiet world existed that only we knew. Sometimes when he laughed, the house felt younger. Sometimes when I spoke about my past, he listened with respect that warmed my tired heart. I knew this was unusual. I knew many would judge without understanding, but in those moments I did not feel like a number or an age or a lonely widow. I felt like a human being whose heart was still capable of feeling something new. Then came a day that shook me. One afternoon he arrived later than usual, slightly nervous, looking around before stepping inside. We sat, tea was poured, but his mind was somewhere else. Finally he spoke. He said he had been accepted for a job in another city, a big opportunity, a step toward his future. For a moment, I could not speak. My hands held the cup, but I did not feel its warmth. I knew this day would come, I had always known, but knowing and hearing are two different things. I smiled and congratulated him, because that is what someone who cares does. Inside, a quiet ache formed, soft but real. In the following days, his visits became fewer. Not because he wanted to leave, but because life was pulling him forward. We spoke less, but every meeting carried more weight. We did not talk about what we had shared. We did not name it. Some stories did not need names. On his last evening before leaving, he came one final time. We drank tea. We talked about his plans. I wished him success. He thanked me for everything, though he did not explain what everything meant. We both understood without words. When he left that night, I watched from the doorway until his figure disappeared into the street. I did not cry. I just stood there, letting the silence return. After he left the city, life slowly returned to how it once was. The house was quiet again. The chairs were still. The garden grew slowly, but something inside me had changed forever. The silence was no longer empty. It carried a memory, a chapter that was short, secret, and impossible to explain to anyone else. Sometimes I would sit by the window with my tea and remember the candlelit evening, the simple conversations, the feeling of being seen and heard after so many years. I did not feel regret. I did not feel shame. I felt gratitude, because life, in its strange way, had given me a moment of warmth in a long winter. Years have passed now. No one in the neighborhood ever learned the full truth. Children grew up, houses changed, people moved on, and I kept this story inside me like a small hidden treasure, not to boast, not to shock, but to remind myself that the heart does not stop feeling just because time moves forward, that even in the quietest life, unexpected chapters can appear, that even when the world believes your story is over, life can still surprise you.
Today, I finally shared this confession with you, not to seek approval, not to justify anything, only to say that behind every silent face, there might be a story you will never guess, and maybe, just maybe, someone listening feels a little less alone. If this story touched you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever lived a moment that changed you quietly without the world ever knowing? I was just an ordinary woman, and this was my hidden story.